Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Business Spotlight. I'm your host, Todd Rodden. I'm a certified business and executive coach. I own Aspire Action Coach based in the Dayton and Cincinnati, Ohio areas. We're thrilled to have you join us today. I think you're going to love this conversation with Dan Phenicie, really of somebody who has a passion for their craft, has turned it into a very profitable business, going to tell his story in the video production business. So again, if you're new to the series, we're thrilled to have you join us. We encourage you to hit subscribe so you can receive future messages from other inspiring entrepreneurs like you're going to hear from Dan Phenicie today. So without further ado, Dan Phenicie, owner of 779, a video production firm here in the region. Welcome to the spotlight. Take a minute, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit more about your business and why video production.
Oh, thanks for having me. So video production. I got into video production by accident, honestly. I needed a job when I was back in college, and a friend of mine who had recently graduated college was working in ad sales at a local television station. So she said, "Hey, I hear they're hiring production assistants at the station. Do you know anything about production?" And I was like, "I can learn." And so that was my first introduction to production. Was working the morning news shift, 4:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. at a local TV station, just running cameras and running the teleprompter, setting up lighting, all that kind of stuff. And then from there, my business partner, who was also a really good friend of mine in college, we kind of both were just, had an interest in filmmaking and film and video. So we kind of did it as a hobby for a while. And then eventually we started to build up, paying clients. And here we are 15 plus years later, still going strong.
Still tugging along 15 years plus in. So you mentioned clients, paying clients. We prefer those kind of clients, right?
Yes,
And
we do.
take a minute and share with us, who are kind of your best clients, your target clients out there? So somebody who's listening and realize, hey, they could be a great fit for your production services.
So over the years, I've had the honor of working with a pretty wide range of clients. I mean, we've gone from everything from Fortune 500 companies, global brands, to the small boutique on down the street. We've worked with nonprofits, both large and small. We've worked with startups. We've worked with mid-sized manufacturers. I mean, you name the business, we've worked with it. And at the same time, we've done all sorts of different types of content, training videos, recruitment videos, things that would be considered, commercials, short form content, long form content. I mean, really, if it involves video, we can do it and have done it. As far as the ideal client, one with money. No, isn't that the ideal client for all of us? No, I would say the ideal client is really anybody that has a story to tell, which I would argue is everybody. Every business, every organization has a story to tell. Some stories are a little easier than others. For example, this is not to rip on accounting firms, but I've done videos for accounting firms, and it can be challenging because there's not a lot visually there to show. Whereas when I'm doing stuff for like a manufacturing firm, oh my God, I mean, you go into these you got shiny machines and all sorts of stuff being made, and it's just
Yeah.
visually just all over the place. But that being said, even with accounting firms, that's kind of the joy of the business is like that creative challenge of like, okay, how do we tell this story visually and keep somebody engaged in, tax filings? How do we do that? And that's kind of the fun creative challenge. So really the ideal client is anybody that wants to tell their story visually is an ideal client.
I'm curious on that. You gave that accounting firm example. How do you get them to kind of open up and realize their story? Sometimes people forget about their stories, right? Or it kind of
Yeah,
gets hidden.
yes. And one thing that I've encountered a lot over the years is you'll run into folks who are just really like engaging and very gregarious, and then as soon as the cameras start rolling, they freeze up and they're immediately just like one word answers. And they got sweat rolling down, but even though like right before the camera was rolling, they were
Yeah.
fine. A lot of that is just really if we have the time, like you say, like how do you find the story? Like ideally, you have the time in pre-production to sit down with folks and really map it out. Like really say what is it that we're trying to say, but ultimately, what is the goal? Like what are we doing with these videos? What do you want these videos to do for you? Uh, from there, also, if there's time on the in the pre-production side, I love doing pre-interviews with folks so that you can specifically identify the folks who are going to be good on camera versus those who might not be as dynamic on camera. But that being said, I mean, a lot of it is just really getting people comfortable. A lot of it's just, before we roll, having that conversation with folks about what to expect. A lot of times having a conversation with folks about something that's completely unrelated to the video that we're about to shoot. Just it's just getting them loosened up and getting them comfortable in front of the cameras. And a lot of times it's just practice. I have one client in particular that when I first started working with this client, their president and CEO was very stiff on camera, would deliver like one or two sentences and then just be like, I want to do that again. And it was kind of I don't want to say painful, but there was a lot of work involved in getting that person like deliver what we wanted. And then there was a lot of editing that was involved in trying to make it coherent and everything. Now, several years later, one or two takes nails it. And it's just a matter of like not only have we worked with them over time, but it's also just a comfort level. Now they walk in, they see the camera, and it's just like they know exactly how to treat the camera as though it's a part of the conversation. And it just takes time sometimes.
You've trained them to be more comfortable and be kind of more natural, on
Yeah,
screen, right? Instead of
yeah,
looking like they're in a courtroom kind of thing.
exactly.
So,
One like one piece of advice I always give folks on that is when you're on camera, you need to amp it up a little bit. I always tell people treat this like a conversation, but don't speak the same way you would if it were a conversation. Because if on camera, being conversational is kind of flat and boring. So I always tell people like it may not seem natural, but just sort of be a little bit more, turn it up to 11, basically, like because it'll come across better on camera. But
so kind of building upon that. So yeah, obviously, video has gotten more popular. There's been more attention to that in, more recent years. But I feel like that folks probably still don't necessarily know how to utilize video content that they have. Maybe share with, hey, what you see are like the best practices and what are people commonly missing?
uh, I think a lot of people, when it comes to video, especially video on, you know, it's going to be on social media, people think like, well, I have to be funny or there has to be some sort of gag here, right? And yeah, if you can pull it off, sure, and it certainly helps to be funny. But I think the main thing that you really need to think about is value. What are you bringing to the table? Why is anybody going to watch this? And it could be because you're funny. It could be because you've got something really visually interesting, but it could also be, I mean, people watch a lot of videos to learn. So it really comes down to like, what is it that you're hoping to accomplish? Like, what's the value? Why is anybody going to watch this? Why would anybody share it? Why would anybody engage with this video? And a lot of that also just comes from the goal from the very beginning. Like, why are you even doing these videos? What's the point? Like, don't just do them just to do them. Don't just post videos because, well, the SEO person tells me that I need to put more videos up, so I'm just going to record some videos and put them up. Really sit down and think about what am I going to do? Why am I doing this? What's the value for my target audience?
So then kind of that next extension, once you've gotten clear around kind of that message around the content, how about then how they leverage it downstream of that, right? Because there can be I think a tendency of, well, hey, we posted it somewhere and then that's it, right?
So yes, and that's where things, and this is where I think a lot of folks kind of get a little intimidated when it comes to video, and I think not just video, but social media marketing in general is, you know, yeah, the old saying, you have to like and follow in order to be liked and followed. So, you know, it's not enough to just post the content. You need to also go out and find peers, find even competitors and, follow them, see what they're doing. like your, peer content, like their content, share their content, engage with it. And then there's the typical keyword research that comes along with that too. But most importantly, and I wish I had this. I have this slide deck presentation, and I wish I had that right now because I always cut to this slide of Cher, the singer Cher,
Yeah,
and I always say
okay.
most importantly, share your content. If you're a business or an organization, you're creating these videos, share them. Make sure that your people within your organization are sharing them. Make sure that you're like, your biggest fans and your biggest evangelists for your product or service are also out there sharing this stuff.
Are there any particular channels you see that are underutilized by folks?
Oh, yes. I have really been beating this drum a lot lately. YouTube, I think, is extremely underutilized by brands and organizations and businesses. I mean, it's the second largest search engine in the world behind Google.
Mhm.
It's the second most visited website in the world behind, of course, once again, Google. They have 2.5 billion monthly active users worldwide. And the best part about YouTube is that they're demographically they dominate across pretty much every category. Whereas like TikTok is huge amongst the under 30 crowd, but their numbers drop off significantly when you get into demographics over the age of 30, for example. YouTube dominates across the board. Even people in the 65 plus category, they engage with and use YouTube far more than any other social media platform. And yet a lot of brands and businesses treat YouTube as a dumping ground for like, oh, we created this video for our 25-year anniversary, put it up on YouTube. But they don't approach YouTube with like a whole strategy of like, okay, let's create YouTube specific content and let's find channels and avenues within YouTube to get that content out there, and also to make sure that you optimize. When you get into SEO and all that kind of stuff. Again, YouTube being the second largest search engine in the world, YouTube should be a central part of your SEO strategy, but it very often is just kind of it's either overlooked, ignored, or just an afterthought in a lot of cases. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there that's being missed.
Okay. Well, I hope our listeners took notes there because everyone's always trying to figure out what's their best, outreach strategies. And so for many, hey, there's upside opportunity
Well,
there with YouTube.
YouTube Shorts is another one. I mean, YouTube Shorts is has a higher engagement rate than TikTok and Instagram. They get I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I believe it's like 70 billion hits a day on YouTube Shorts. So there's a huge potential there, and I I've fallen down the YouTube Shorts rabbit hole many times where it's just like, well, a lot of times, like I'm like, all right, I'm getting ready to go to bed, so I'll just watch like 10 minutes of YouTube Shorts. Next thing I know, like 2 hours have gone by, and I'm like, crap, I've just sat here for 2 hours and I've probably watched 300 short videos. But it,
Yeah.
but it speaks to the power of it because they're very short, they're very quick hit, and you can just kind of like, you don't really have to engage too deeply with them, but if they're structured right, you can still get
Yeah. It's kind of
a
draw you
message
in.
across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, kind of next step with that for you, what are the best, marketing channels for you? How do you best find your next customers?
I have found over the years that what works the best has been word of mouth. I mean, in my line of work, word of mouth, hands down, is the top way that people find me. And a lot of that's just because, well, number one, for bigger budget projects, like let's just say, for example, we'll just pick $60,000. Let's say you've got $60,000 you want to spend on video. You're probably not going to go to Google and just look up video production company if you've got that kind of money to spend. If you're looking to spend like 5,000 or below on video, okay, sure, Google. But if you've got like big dollars you want to spend on video, you're going to want to make sure that you're hiring somebody that is good and will deliver. And so in that situation, most people are going to reach out to their friends. They're going to say, hey, who did that video that you did a couple years ago? Or, hey, do you know anybody that does video work? Or,
Mhm.
so word of mouth is crucial. And that's not to say that all the other avenues like, social media and networking and all that other stuff is because I'd get leads from those avenues as well. But yeah, overwhelmingly, it's word of mouth.
Okay. All right. Hey, Dan, you're 16 years in now to this. So always entrepreneurs have twists and turns in the road. I'm curious, what's been a past challenge that you've had that you've overcome, and what did you learn from that?
Um, you know, I'd say the biggest challenge that I've had to overcome and this is quite honestly still kind of ongoing is the commoditization of not just video production, but the commoditization of creative work in general. But I'll specifically just talk to video, and that's just because I mean, you know, we all have these things in our pockets,
Right.
and there was a time when, shooting video on a cell phone was like it was just going to look like crap. It was going to be grainy and terrible lighting. And I got to tell you, the latest generation of iPhones, they're pretty impressive on video quality, especially if you're just shooting something that's going straight on to the internet. You can do a pretty decent job with an iPhone. And if you start getting like a lot of little accessories, because you can get external microphones for iPhones, you can get little, they're impressive compared to what they were even 5 years ago. And so because of the I can't say the words too early, ubiquitousness of video, because it is everywhere. I mean, I can't remember the statistic, but something like 80% of content on whether it's Facebook, Instagram, whatever social media
Yeah.
platform you're on, 80% of the content's video. So when something is everywhere, it sort of becomes, there's sort of a devaluing of it that comes with that. And so that's been a challenge that has sort of gone from sort of a small little challenge to a big challenge to one that's, I think, now sort of manageable, but it's ongoing. And I'd say that's the biggest challenge that I've faced is just like, how do you, how do you get noticed in a sea of, when, how do you stand out in a massive crowd for one? Uh, but also, how do you really let people know the value of what you do? When again, everybody's just like, well, I can just shoot this myself with my iPhone, right?
Mhm. So I'm
Which,
curious. So how have you had to change a pivot then to do that, to get that word out about, your added value around that, right? How you stand out.
well, I think that's just the value is it right there. It's really, really hammering in that value. I always say like it's there's sort of this Venn diagram that I always kind of work with on projects. Like you have cost and quality. So how much money do I have and how good of a quality product can I deliver within that budget? But at the end of the day, also you got to have value. Was it worth it? Did the client think that this was worth it? And I think that's really where providing value, providing that whole, you know, what's defining the goal ahead of time and designing the video or videos, because in this day and age, just one ain't going to cut it anymore. And designing them so that they will achieve that target. I think that's one thing that kind of makes me and my business stand out from other video production companies is like I started out as a marketer. A lot of video production folks, they're video production first and foremost. And I started out in the world of marketing and then moved into video production. And so I still bring that marketing mindset to video production. Like, yeah, I can sit there and talk about, the best way to light something and, what frame rate should we shoot this at? And I can talk about all of that. But at the end of the day, I really think about it from the standpoint of what's the goal? How do we use this content to achieve said goal? And, it's all about value at that point.
So that's been a challenge you've had in the past. Probably sounds like, will continue on. Is there another challenge you have in front of you right now you're trying to solve for in 2025?
I don't know that it's a challenge yet, but I think it has the potential to become one, and that is AI.
Yes,
Everybody's
yes.
everybody's got to talk about AI, right? And my I always have this joke: you can't spell snake oil without an A and an I. And it it's kind of tongue in cheek, sort of jokingly, because I do think, just my personal opinion, my personal experience is that 80 to 90% of AI applications are just that. They provide no real value. It's I run all of my email through Gmail, like the Google's enterprise, whatever. And so I'm constantly hit with Gemini can do this. Try Gemini to do that. I don't see the point. Like, Gemini's like, here, we can summarize this email for you. And I'm like, Gemini, I can read. I don't need you to summarize this email for me. I can read the email and summarize it myself. And I've even used Gemini, like, okay, summarize this email for me. And I'm just like, what was the point of that? But I mean, that's kind of my whole thought on like a lot of AI. Now, that's not to say that all AI is complete bullcrap, because there are a lot of AI applications where it's just like, okay, that has a lot of potential. That could be huge someday. And as it relates to video production, there's a lot of generative AI stuff where it's like, oh, just type in your prompts and we'll just spit out the video for you. They, that's one of those things where I think a couple more years to really perfect that technology, and it could really be, I could see a day where I can just type in, like, here's my script, here's the action that I want, here's the setting that I want, here are the characters that I want, here's the dialogue they need to be delivered, and hit enter and come back in like 20 minutes and boom, there's my video. I can see a world where that's going to be a possibility. We're not there yet. We're a ways from that, because right now, like, even most of the generative AI video platforms, there's a lot to be desired. I recently, just as an example, had a project where I had a client where we shot some scenes last year for a video, and some of the scenes were set outside by a pool. And so we shot those back in early October this past year. And just in January of this year, that same client said, hey, we want to adapt that video for another one of our products. How hard would that be? Well, doing that involved reshooting some of those scenes by the pool. Well, it's January in Cincinnati. So what we did was we went out and we got the chair that we had our actor sitting in by the pool, got our actor in the same outfit and everything, and just shot it green screen and then composited it. But that meant removing the actor from the original clip. We had to remove the actor from the original clip and replace it, which meant that, like, okay, now we have to paint the background in and everything. In the past, that would have involved literally several days worth of going in and painstakingly, like, painting out that person from the background and replacing it. So I thought, well, heck, I'm going to take this clip, feed it into all these generative AI platforms, and see what the results are. It was terrible. None of these AI platforms, every single one of them, it wasn't even like, okay, you got it close. It was really just like, what the hell is this? Really? That's the best that you can do? And okay. But anyway, long story short, I did end up using AI. I ended up using Photoshop of all things. Like, I took a still image from that scene, took it into Photoshop, and Photoshop has a generative fill feature. And for this specific piece, it worked really well. I have played around with the generative fill feature in Photoshop on other projects, and it's eh, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For this one, I was just like, as soon as it finished the whole generation, I was just like, holy crap, that's amazing. So then I took that still image and was able to, like, basically animate it so that it matched the back or the motion, and it worked. But that's another one of those things where, like, right now, the AI technology is not there yet. Will it be there in 5, 10 years? I I don't see why not at the
Okay.
current pace of things.
So speaking of 5, 10 years, what's your vision for the business then down the road? You say 5 to 10 years from now, where would you ideally see the business being?
Man, I'm in my mid 40s. In 5 to 10 years, I'm hoping I've sold it and I'm living on a beach somewhere.
Okay.
Nah. But then reality sets in, and I realize that's probably not going to happen. No, in 5 to 10 years, Uh, I would like to see my business as sort of a go-to. resource, not just for video production, because right now, and over, I think people just see me as like, that's the video guy, which is fine because I am a video guy. But I'd like to start building the business more towards like that, like we were saying, that strategy side of things. And really, what is the value of doing this video? Because I do think that that's going to be the make or break point for not just video production, but advertising and marketing in general moving forward. Is it's really going to come down to what kind of results can you deliver? Uh, I remember a couple of years ago reading. It was either I read an interview or I saw a video of an interview with can't remember his name right now, but he's like the global head of marketing for P&G, and he was talking about how he constantly gets these creative agencies that come in and say, "Oh, this piece of content that we created for you got 5 million views," and he said, "I don't care. How many of those 5 million viewers became customers? How many of them converted?" He goes, "I don't care if a piece of content got 5 million views or 50,000 views or 5,000 views. What I care about is the conversion." And I think that kind of ties into that whole value thing because a lot of creative agencies are still kind of hooked on that whole, oh, we got this much traffic, we drove this much traffic to your website, we drove this much traffic to your social media channels, and so on and so forth, which is great. But if nobody's converting, if people are just watching your content and then moving on to the next piece of content, what's the point?
Yeah. Answer that so what, question, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So Dan, our time flies. So as we get close to wrapping up here, I'm curious, what do you view as kind of your keys to success? And hey, you wish you knew then that you know now.
Oh boy, the what I wish I knew then. It goes back to that whole value thing, really. Like that's something that his I wouldn't say there was an aha moment for that. It's just something that sort of grew over time. Like over time, I started to realize, like, I really need to lean into this, like with clients. Like it's not good enough to just say, like, okay, here's your video. Doesn't it look great?
Mhm.
But you really need to lean into what is the goal and how does this video service that goal? And that's one thing that, like, if I could have been thinking along those lines like 10 years ago, you know, I was going to say it's one of those coulda, woulda, shoulda. I mean,
Yes.
everybody has those, but
For sure. That's why part of the reasons we have this series. So,
yeah.
so, so Dan, as we look forward, what are the best ways for folks to stay connected with you and also to be connected and follow 779?
For 779, I would say just definitely check out our website, which is 779, just the numbers, 779video.com. Our work, you can check out a lot of our work there. You can also reach out to me and my business partner directly through that. I would say that for me personally, the social media platform that I'm most active on is LinkedIn. So if you want to follow me or reach out to me directly, LinkedIn would be the way to do it. Um, which is interesting. I should do more. My wife, who's also digital marketing, tells me like, "Why aren't you on Instagram?" And I'm like, "I know, dear, I need to be on Instagram more often, but LinkedIn it is for me at the moment."
So then as we wrap up here, Dan Phenicie, what are you inspired by today?
Uh, well, this sounds kind of cliche probably, but I have an 8-year-old daughter, and just she inspires me. You're just seeing like it's easy, I'm in my mid 40s, so it's easy to sort of become the jaded, cynical, bitter middle-aged man. It's easy to
Dan, you're a
fall
young
into
man. Don't go there. You're a young man.
but you know what I'm saying, like it's easy to fall into that trap and like seeing having my daughter like get excited about things and like still having that wonder of the world and learning about new things that keeps me inspired. And honestly, I have to. My daughter really is the one that kind of turned me on to YouTube Shorts. She was just constantly watching YouTube Shorts, and she would always be like, "Hey, check out this funny video." Oh, and suddenly I was just like, what's going on with this whole YouTube Shorts thing? Like, I mean, I know that clearly it's their attempt at going after Instagram and TikTok in particular, but like, I was like, I would have probably not given as much attention to YouTube Shorts as I do now had it not been for my daughter. Same thing with Taylor Swift, by the way. I would have probably have never given Taylor Swift the time of day, but because of my daughter who loves Taylor Swift, now I have favorite Taylor Swift songs because of
Okay,
her.
you're
So
transformed into a Swiftie on top of all your other skills and passions. So
yeah, which that never would have happened had it not been for my daughter.
Well, Dan Phenicie, thank you for joining us and sharing your story here. Great lessons learned as an entrepreneur. I can also for our listeners as well, some real good, tips around their marketing strategies, how to better leverage video. Also, who to reach out to, who can help get them farther down the path to getting results with their video strategies as well. So thank you for sharing the 779 story. And again, to our viewers. We're grateful for you joining us here today. Again, encourage you to hit that subscribe button and also hit the like button and share as well to help get the message out. So with that, thank you all and have a terrific day.